I'm absolutely thrilled about our next keynote speaker. He comes from a company whose name you can't go an hour without hearing. Facebook is prolific. It dominates our culture, it dominates our lives, and it's about to dominate our workspaces. Anand leads the ecosystem partnerships for Workplace by Facebook across North and Latin America. He graduated from MIT, co-founded a Y Combinator, Horowitz, Highland Capital Partners, and Andreessen funded startup, which was acquired in 2014. He's brilliant, super cool, and I'm so excited to welcome him, Anand.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Cool. Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. It's that time of the day, right? It's like the third day of the conference, and like you've had lunch, and so I'm going to fight against your blood sugar levels and see where we get. We'll spend, before we get into stuff, like I wanted to get a feel for who's in the audience, like who's in IT? Okay. Who is in like legal and compliance? Okay. Digital transformation, innovation? Okay. Any other sort of functions that we're not talking about that I'm missing? Crisis management, okay. Records management, okay, thank you. That's funny, it's already getting to be fun, this is great. Okay, why don't we dive in and then we'll get started. Oh, should have go one back. There we go.
Why do we go to work? We go because it matters, even when it feels like we're on our own. But now, there's a place to find our team, where we can share what we've learned, and be part of a group where we all have the same goals. When we're connected, our voices help build something better, faster, together. Let's get to work.
Cool. So my name is Anand. I run partnerships for a new product that Facebook launched about 1.5 years ago. It's called Workplace by Facebook. And I do two things. I work with our technology partners to build integrations that meaningfully make a difference to how people use software at work. And I also work with our consulting partners like Accenture and Deloitte and the others, and PwC to figure out how we can help organizations transform digitally. The rest of the introductions have already been done, so I'm going to skip that. I'm glad to be here. It's pretty nostalgic. I used to live a couple of hours away, done a bunch of trips out here, so I'm glad to be back here today. What we're going to do today is, if we can leave today with these 4 big takeaways, I think that would be probably a good use of time. Hopefully at the end of this conversation, all of you will leave with a feeling or an understanding of the following 4 things. We're continuing to see the rules of the game change. We're seeing values, culture, and decision-making mechanisms as being the key to navigating this change. We're seeing that, broadly speaking, an open and connected culture is starting to correlate with better performance. And at Facebook, we're trying to productize this approach with Workplace. So we'll talk about the changes that we're seeing. We'll talk about the Facebook story, so I'll give you guys a behind-the-scenes view of how we're navigating these changes. And that will lead up to how we believe we could scale our approach to transforming how work gets done. I tend to speak fast, so if you can't understand what I'm saying, like raise your hands, I'll repeat myself, and then we'll go from there. Cool? Okay, all right, let's roll. It used to be that you could play the game based on a certain set of rules. How many chess players in the audience? Anyone plays chess? Wow, a lot of people. That's cool. What are the total number of opening moves for a white on a chess piece, the first move? How many first moves does a white have? Shout it out, I can't hear you guys. Who said 20? Right answer. 16 pawns and then 4 knights. It used to be that we could run strategy and run playbooks for strategy based on a certain set of rules. But what we're starting to see increasingly happen is that the rules of the games is changing as you play it. How do we know that that's a fact? It's because 85% of the Fortune 500 companies that were on the list back in 1955 are gone. They've either been acquired, they went bankrupt, or they merged, or they fell off of the list, and the list is ranked by revenue. And the average lifespan of a Fortune 500 company dropped significantly, I think by about 70 or 80%. So if you've been on the list, the probability of you falling off the list is much higher now. Why is that happening? Why are we seeing this change and the velocity of change accelerating? I think there are 3 reasons. One, I think is software is changing how the world operates. Back in '98, which is roughly the time like I got on the internet for the first time ever, don't get into strangers' cars, do not meet people from the internet. 2017, literally get strangers from the internet and get into their car, right? That's kind of insane. So how you interact with the world is changing because software is changing the world around you. And what that is doing is if your companies whose growth curves look like A or B, you're suddenly starting to see super fast accelerated growth from startups and companies that look like X, Y, or Y, or even Z, right? And what used to be assets in your business are starting to become liabilities. I mean, it's happening across the board, like ride sharing, hotels, financial investment, distribution of content, consumer product goods. Across the board, incumbents are being challenged by upstarts because they're leveraging software to disrupt existing business models. This is not new, right? The question really is, why are they able to do that so efficiently and quickly beyond, obviously, the structural reasons that exist in like just the economics of doing business? The second reason is that the workforce is actually changing. It's pretty obvious at this point that by 2020, like over half of the workforce will be millennials. And I'm like, I'm at the cusp of being a millennial. I'm not quite a millennial. So like, I look at these guys and like the way they operate is very different. Like it used to be that like you would be in the desktop era, and if you look at your day, look at when you would work, when you would have your personal time, and where you would engage with digital technologies. Those little like blue things that you guys see here, that used to be like your engagement with technology. And that used to be your digital life, and it was kind of when you guys were taking a break for lunch or breakfast in the morning or like after work. Given that like mobile is so pervasive, this is what we're seeing now. Literally, right? Like your digital life spans from the time you wake up to go to bed. It has positive and negative implications, but that's just how they live, right? The other thing is what's happening with the content that they interact with when they're online is also changing. Like it used to be that, hey, you know, like I went and visited New York, and then you could text your friend or your colleague, and then people started putting photos, and people started putting video on it, and now you have live video, and we're getting to AR and VR. So there's an evolution of the format of the content that people are interacting with as well. True story, like when one of our clients, they told us this, that when they hired their new batch of employees, they had to put them through, and this is all millennial workforce, right? They had to put them through email training, like how to use like Outlook and how to send an email and what buttons do you click. Like very different, right? These guys and girls are used to like texting and grew up in an environment where short messaging is much more accessible than long form conversations. So the workforce is changing, and that's actually driving both a structural change and a systemic change in how organizations operate. It used to be that you can run an organization top down, where you had employees, they had positions, there were processes, procedures, communication was long form, it's kind of rigid. But with young folks coming in, there's an expectation that the conversations end up being bottom up, people work on things that they're passionate about, it's no longer about processes, it's about projects, and it's a much more agile approach to how these folks work. Now, if you think about the changes that we went through, software is changing, the workforce is changing, the communication formats is changing, and that's driving a misalignment between strategy and execution. And between strategy and execution lies this like really fuzzy land called culture, where if you talk to leaders, like 69% of them believe that transparency and communication allows them, better transparency and communication allows them to achieve their vision and execute better, but only 14% are really satisfied with what they have. And if you notice, and so what you see on your right side of the slide is a Deloitte study from 2016, and it's gotten worse since 2014 when Korn and Ferry ran a similar study where leaders said like, hey, 72% said it's really important that culture is aligned with what we want to do, so there's organizational performance, but only 32% said that that's actually the case. And we're acutely aware of this at Facebook. Have any of you been to the Facebook campus in Menlo Park? Do you remember the sign you see? Do you remember seeing this? So it's right in front of our campus. The backside of the sign is that. Did you know that?
Yeah, I worked for Sun for 12 years.
Great. So we left the building numbers exactly the same. So if you go back and look for building 10, you will find it exactly where it was.
I have been by.
Great. I know. We tell ourselves that like no one is immune to this, including us, and we leave this to remind ourselves that anybody could get disrupted, and we have conference rooms that still have Sun like logos on it, right? As a reminder to us that no one's immune to this change. And so the questions we ask ourselves is like, how do we navigate this change? And Chris Cox, our chief product officer, talks about this like very eloquently, and he says that performance is about decisions, right? And he says our culture is the sum of the daily decisions we make when we work. So we should treat this with extreme care because it gets manifold projected outward in ways that we cannot control. So it's important that we align what we do with our values and our principles because they will reflect itself in the products that we build. And so everything at Facebook starts and ends with the values. And these are the 5 core values that we think of when we make decisions on how to navigate change. Like, are you building social value? Are you moving fast enough? Are you making bold decisions? Are you open? And are you focusing on impact? And Facebook's journey is interesting because back in 2011, we're just 3,200 employees, under 1 billion users. And the question we started asking ourselves is, if we believe that culture and values is the missing link between all the chaos that's happening in the outside world and navigating it because better decision needs to be made, how do you scale this? You cannot tell people what to do every single time. You've got to give them a rubric so they can make their decisions. And what ended up happening was we realized that the way to scale culture, impact, and navigate chaos is clear communication. And Cheryl talks about this where she says, like, the company's performance is the sum of individual performances. Individual performance is the sum of relationships, and relationships is a product of how you communicate. So we asked ourselves, how can we communicate and collaborate better internally to navigate everything that we're seeing externally? And so we went and built something, because we have a bunch of engineers, so we decided to just go build it. And we built this thing called Workplace. This was back in 2011. For those of you, how many of you have used Facebook? Probably better questions. Who doesn't use Facebook? Okay. 5%. Okay. So for those of you who don't know what Facebook looks like you'll notice that Facebook and Workplace are pretty similar. You have the feed. You have a bunch of stuff on the left side, which tends to be mostly groups. You have trending posts. But what it ends up being is it's a private instance of Facebook for Facebook. So we took the public Facebook, and we partitioned that and said, we're going to use Facebook to run Facebook. And so we built Workplace to do that. We also built a companion app that went along with it called WorkChat. WorkChat is like Messenger. How many folks use Messenger? So it does exactly the same things that you would expect in Messenger. So one-to-one chat, one-to-many chat, voice calls, video calls, screen sharing, and all of that stuff. So it's a family of 2 apps that we built based on what we gave to customers. We just kind of separated it out and used it for ourselves to communicate and make decisions. And a bunch of pretty interesting things started happening. So aligning with one of the values that Mark is really passionate about, which is to be open, we started using Workplace to encourage dialogue inside the company about things that matter. So every Monday morning, Mark's internal comms person publishes a poll to the entire company. We're about, at this point, I think we're over 20,000 people. And the question is, what would you like Mark to cover at Town Hall this Friday? And people ask questions, other people vote on them, and Mark always answers the top 3 questions. It gives him a pulse on what's important to the organization and gives the organization an opportunity to get authentic responses back from leadership. And often these end up being conversations and questions around judgment calls and the rubric of decision making that went on behind the scene when those judgment calls were made, because they help others understand and realize how to make decisions when there's absence of information and there's a lot of change happening. But it's not just like at Mark's level. It also changed how we work. For those of you who know about Simon Terry and the change agents worldwide, have you heard of Simon Terry? He's pretty cool. You should check him out. Somebody did. Okay. He talks about being in the flow, being above the flow, and being hidden from the flow. Like traditionally, organizations like have conversation in silos, mostly in email chains. It's one-on-one problem solving. It's voice calls and emails, and it's unpublished documents. All that is hidden from the flow. Or it's above the flow, right? You're filling up structured forms. You're publishing really long form, perfect content. You are trying to publish articles on the web. It's above the flow. This assumes perfection. This assumes like lack of visibility. What we discovered is if you actually work in flow, which is publish stuff that you're working on right now, even if it's not perfect, and try and get input from others as soon as possible with no pride of ownership, you tend to get better results. Because the group tends to be collectively smarter than the individual. And when we end up with questions that we don't have answers with, like what do we build next, or here's a strategy problem we're dealing with, we usually tend to go to Workplace. We kind of ask questions openly. We post to groups. We write short posts. We share activities saying, I'm working on this. I'm going to the InfoGovCon conference. Here's what I'm going to talk about. What do you think I should talk about? And then people give me inputs, and I base the conversation that I want to have around this. So being in flow is a key way we discovered to move really, really quickly. And we use Workplace to be able to do that. It's not just about like putting questions out there and getting information. It's also about collaborating as a group to make decisions. So this is actually, go back. I don't know if you guys can read. So this is like back from 2011. You can see actually Mark comment here on an engineering project that someone built in a group, which is the community's product, and this is the group for the community's product. So there's a shift already happening from structured information to unstructured information and conversations where the value of the information is actually in these unstructured conversations. Bob is saying like, hey, how important is it to show members of the group who are online who are not friends of yours? And this is like Zuck's feedback. Like this would have been in a PRD locked away in some file share system, which is one way of doing it. We've chosen a very different way of doing it, which is like, I don't have the answer to this. I don't know what the structured PRD should be, but this is a question I'm thinking about. I'm going to put it out there in the engineering team and see what the feedback is. So an example of working in flow. And as we evolved and we've moved conversations away from email into groups, from structured to unstructured, pretty interesting things started happening. Oh, let's go back. Go back here. We started seeing this notion of like bots, where people inside Facebook started building a bunch of bots into this product called Workplace, which automates work. So you could imagine things like, hey, my XYZ equipment is broken, filing a help desk ticket in a structured database, that just changed. And where we've gone to is we interact with a bot, And the fact that the mobile device has video and photo capabilities, you're creating proof of what the issue or the ticket is. You're talking to this bot, and the bot automatically goes and files this away into a system that then takes action and follow-on work. And with AI and bots, we're starting to see a lot more of these micro tasks that are getting automated, and micro tasks that no longer need the user or expect the user to understand a different system, leave workplace, go to another system, understand the user experience of that system, log in with your username and password. If you don't have single sign-on, we probably forgot. And then doing password resets, you get into the system, try to understand the navigation, go in, file a ticket, and then you wait for triage to happen. All of this just goes away because you sit inside work chat, you're talking to the repair bot, you're telling the bot what you need, the bot is triaging in real time, and your ticket is filed. And you don't have to leave an experience that you're used to leaving. So we're seeing a lot of automation happen in workplace. But it's not just about like process workflows, it's also like stuff that we're starting to see. It's pretty unique. Like, here's an example of a bot that exists in our system. It's called a thanks bot. It's inside workplace, and when someone posts something and asks for feedback and someone gives feedback, so in this case, Namit posted something which is a design document, again, in flow, work in process, and Simon here, invokes the bot by saying thanks for turning this around quickly, Namit. The thanks bot kicks in and says like, hey, your thanks has been recorded. It notifies Namit's manager, Mark Davis, logs that in Namit's performance evaluation system, and it sends in both an email to Mark and an email to Simon's manager. And the goal of this is it's creating a culture where it's okay to put stuff out there that's like half done, get feedback, get help. It's okay to ask for help, and it's great to help others. And building a community and a sense of openness, you have to like create these social signals to be able to build that kind of a community. And so we're starting to see AI and bots come about to do things like this, which is very counterintuitive. You would have expected to do SAP process automation or like ECM, document workflow automation. That is happening, but we're also starting to see this other stuff around all the soft and fuzzy things that organizations want to try and achieve. And then we have the more structured stuff, which is like, where do documents live? And what we ended up doing was like, we ended up integrating Workplace with a bunch of EFSS platforms. And so we integrated with like all these folks over here and said, this is the system of record where structured content and files live. And Workplace is a system of engagement where these are shared, discussed, and organized. So continue to use where your file repositories are, but use Workplace as a way to like have conversations and make decisions around those. And then we said, everyone's starting to use this internally. We should probably think about like compliance and data loss prevention and e-discovery and stuff like that. So we went off and we integrated into, we did a bunch of stuff. Like we got all these certifications that was important from an enterprise security standpoint. And then we went and integrated into single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. So all of Workplace is like on multi-factor authentication now. And we integrated with all these security compliance vendors, built webhooks so you could then parse the data and put it into discovery and compliance products. We also started looking at other interesting things. So what you're seeing on screen is this functionality called accounts at risk. And what accounts at risk does is using AI and all the other things that happen behind the scenes, we figure out what are the accounts in Workplace that are at risk because the passwords that they've used for Workplace has been used in other services, not Facebook services, not Workplace services, Yahoo or like Equifax or whatever, right? If those passwords have been used in other services that have suffered data breaches, we surface that inside Workplace and say these accounts are at risk because Nikhil's password at Workplace is the same as Nikhil's password in Equifax. And so that's an account at risk. And so admin, go in, and you probably want to like deactivate the user till a password reset happens because whoever has Nikhil's password is going to be able to get into Workplace as well. So there's stuff happening behind the scenes using AI and other things which allow for us to secure these accounts. Part of the secret sauce is not talking about it. It's true. True story. There's stuff on the dark web where all of these things are. And a large part of this is making sure that when stuff gets on the dark web, our information security and threat policy teams know that's happening and are able to correlate the data back into protecting user accounts. So we were doing all of this stuff internally, and a lot of customers started asking us, how do we try to innovate, rapidly make decisions, scale culture? How do we do that too? And so we asked ourselves the question, what is the best way to productize everything that we're seeing? And is that aligned with our core principles as a company, which is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together? We've never done it in the enterprise. We try to solve our own problem and quickly realize that other people have the same problem too. And so we stripped out Workplace from within Facebook, made its own standalone enterprise product with a separate team, separate code base, and all that stuff, and spun it out as a standalone product, coming out in general availability. It came out like October 2016. And we did a bunch of other things. Like we made sure that Workplace as a product would end up giving a private subdomain to each customer or a company that wanted it. The company owns the data, not Facebook. You integrate with IDP and SSO, and obviously there's a whole suite of security stuff behind it. That's Workplace. What you won't see in Workplace is personal posts, friends and family, no one sending you Candy Crush requests, no ads. The identity is completely separate. So I have 4 apps on my phone if I'm an employee using Workplace. So it's my personal Facebook, my personal Messenger, and then there's Workplace and there's Work Chat. Identities are completely separate because this is owned by the enterprise, this is owned by the individual. So we did that and we put it out there in the world. And these are the organizations that we're starting to see use Workplace. Walmart, 2 million employees. Starbucks uses it heavily. We see governments use it. Government of Singapore, 125,000 people or something like that, all on Workplace. And a bunch of very large organizations using Workplace. What we're hearing from customers is it's familiar for people to use because it looks and feels like Facebook and Messenger. It's born on the mobile. It allows you to run business processes and it's secure and separate, and that allows them to do what they need to do. Since this is not a product pitch, I'm not going to go into features and functionality into detail. I just wanted to share the origin story with you guys, which was we saw change happening. To navigate the change, we felt like building an open, connected internal organization is important. So we built a product to solve our own problem. Other people asked for it, so we spun it out as a separate product. And we're starting to see impact in the world where other organizations are starting to adopt this product as a way for them to scale performance and impact. And I want to leave you guys with this last video here about Starbucks talking about this. What you're going to see on screen is Kevin Johnson. He is the CEO of Starbucks. He joined from Microsoft. He took over from Howard Schultz, I think, earlier this year. And this is what Kevin is talking about at the shareholder conference, annual shareholder conference that happened, I want to say April 2017, about how they're using information in the flow and connecting people to find insights and make decisions. So let's hear what he's got to say, and then I'm happy to take any questions.
In January, we implemented Workplace by Facebook. Now think of Workplace by Facebook as a private Facebook for Starbucks partners to communicate and share information. Workplace allows us now to stream live open forums and have real-time dialogue with our store managers. We launched this in January with a live open forum hosted by Howard and myself with all store managers in the US. That's what you see up here on the screen. This was actual live open forum in January. And you can see by this live video, we are getting real-time comments, hearts, thumbs up, sometimes a thumbs down, mostly thumbs ups, and store managers asking us questions. Now this was a new experience for both Howard and myself. But we have now started doing these Workplace live open forums with our store managers every month. And store managers have now found a way to create community and better connect with us. Some recent examples. About a month ago, a store manager posted on Workplace. They posted a post that said that they are selling more than 20 beverages a day that are not on our official beverage menu. They are beverages that were featured on Instagram. How many people use Instagram to get your beverage? See, all kinds of beverages on Instagram. Well, they're selling 20 a day. They're not sure they have the right recipe. Well, within 24-hour period, nearly 40 other store managers also posted and said, I too, I'm selling 15 of these a day. I'm selling 30 of these a day. And then that evening, our category marketing team saw the volume of posts and how much this beverage featured on Instagram was selling in our stores. And they made a decision that night and posted back to store managers by the next morning that they had made the decision to add this to the official beverage recipes, something that could have taken weeks, if not months, to happen before Workplace, happened in one day. That is creating visibility with our store managers that's enabling us to have more velocity in the way we make decisions so we can better serve our store managers and our partners in the stores.
Happy to answer any questions.
I'll start us off.
Okay.
I'm really thankful you came and talked about the Facebook culture, because the culture at Facebook is sort of storied of legend. One of the interesting things I see, you posted a post by an engineer, and then Mark Zuckerberg ends up posting a reply on that. What does that do to a hierarchy of a company, and have you seen pushback from executives and leaders that, or the opposite? I don't know what the feedback would be when you sort of have a hierarchy that becomes more flat.
Yeah. It does interesting things to hierarchy. What we've seen is it reduces the distance between people who are doing the work and leadership, which means the front line and the execs. It just collapses everything in between. And it forces everyone in the middle to add more value. So questions just like, what is the role of a manager, changes significantly. Positional leadership becomes more important as opposed to structural leadership. So it will end up what we broadly think is like positive pressure for everybody in the organization to deliver more. It's because positional power, brokered power by passing information back and forth, that brokering is no longer necessary. So where do you add value? That question gets asked a lot. I think it's good because the alternative is decline happening and you don't see it as leadership, right? So it is painful for if your perspective is it impacts hierarchy, and not all organizations like need to function like this. I mean, certain organizations, I think it's better to have hierarchy. In certain, in defense, for example, probably hierarchy is important. Like in a battlefield, you can't have like random people running off in random directions, right? So I don't think this is a solve for all organizations, but if you're in business and you're trying to stay competitive, then value creation is what's most important. And if there's anything getting in the way of value creation, then it probably makes sense to like re-ask those questions. Which is why I think a lot of CEOs like Workplace, because it helps them talk to the people who are like experience. Your Starbucks experience is not defined by Kevin or Howard. It's by the barista who serves you coffee. If he or she is like not doing a good job, you're not going back. And so it's important for leadership to know that, right? It's a tough question, but I guess that's how the world rolls. Yes, ma'am, you in the back. I feel like I'm at an auction. Yes, ma'am, you in the back.
$1,000.
I'll take that.
Can you talk to me about your e-discovery and how you perform litigation holds and where all this stuff lives? Because for us as a company, we don't really want anything where we have instant messaging or anything like that because we can't capture that. So can you speak about that a little bit?
Happy to. Let me just go back go back to that slide. This goes back to how we think about building products. Okay. Facebook realizes that we'll never be the best at building e-discovery compliance products. That's not what we do. We build products that people love and want to use. But we understand that organizations need it. So our approach to this is threefold. First, all the data that's flowing through the workplace instance, so say starbucks.facebook.com, is owned by Starbucks. It's not owned by the employee. It's not owned by Facebook. It's owned by Starbucks. So the rights to everything that's flowing through that instance is Starbucks, the corporation that owns it. So that's a policy decision we've made. The product decision we made was we give the administrators of the instance the power to access everything that's going in there programmatically through APIs. Because it's hard for someone to sit and read like 50,000, 60,000 people's worth of comments, right? With the API, the understanding is you can go in and you get like God mode view into the system. You can see who's posting, what's being posted, how often, which groups, how many secret groups exist, what's happening in those secret groups. Like you can read everything in there as the administrator of the instance, programmatically as well as manually. The partnership decision we've made is integrate with the best of breed products out there so that when customers want to be able to implement any of these information governance strategies, the hooks are already built in. And our belief is if we can help and nurture an ecosystem on top of Workplace, that will be a better way to serve these compliance requirements. And so like, for example, like Netscope, like we integrate with Netscope, they do both inline detection and which is like proxy-based, and they also do API-based where you can extract stuff, you can dump it into another product, you can analyze it for keywords, you can put triggers and alerts and workflows, and then that'll trigger back stuff into Workplace. So let's say someone puts personally identifiable information inside Workplace. If you have an integration, the rules engine will kick in, will flag it to the administrator, and if there's a preset rule saying delete that content, you can auto-delete it without even a human being in the process at all. And so that's our approach that we're taking because I think it's such a deep and specialized topic that one size fits all is just not going to work. So the best way is to give people the flexibility to build what they want and customize it. Does that answer your question?
It does. So you can capture things as they're happening. If you were on litigation hold, would I be able to capture what you were doing at any given moment?
Yes. Assuming you're the admin of the instance. I think you had your hand first, and then I'm going to like go around. Richard, you want to go first, and then we can.
Hello. Do we need more technology now? I thought I'd seen studies that workplace and business efficiencies continue to go down, not up, even as we throw and provide yet more technology to our employees.
Such a hard philosophical question. Too much of anything is not good. It's just a question of where is the threshold when too much is too much. The mistake that most organizations make is throw tools at the problem. And when customers ask us, hey, we want a collaboration product, can we use Workplace? The answer usually is like, I don't think that's a good idea. We have to go back to what we call as like the five principles of any change management thing. What's the vision behind what you want to do? Who cares about it? How are you going to roll this thing out? And there's a couple of other things which are more technical. But it goes back to why do you want this? Like, there's an M&A event that's happening. There are multiple cultures in the organization, and it's going to erode shareholder value unless there's a cohesive view to the organization. So what is a compelling reason for you to have something that brings people together? If you believe that it's important to build community, what is the reason for building community? And then if the answer is a tool, the answer is a tool. Otherwise, it's not. That's the approach that we tend to take for a lot of these things. So we're very much talking to early adopt. If you look at the adoption model, in Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma, he talks about early adopters. He talks about, I forget the first stage. It's early adopters, early majority, late majority, and I think it's innovators. Innovators, early majority, innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, something like that. But we're talking only to folks who are on the left side of the bell curve, who believe there's a purpose for this stuff. Yes. What I was going to say in defense of the product is we strongly believe in taking the suck out of work. Like, how many of you enjoy filing expenses? How many of you enjoy filing IT help desk tickets? How many of you love approving POs? Like, the collective disservice we've done to all of us just because of legacy technologies on like having to go through forms and workflows to get there, like we can take all of that out of the equation. Like, I can be here right now and file a ticket for something and then it'll all happen. Like, that's time saving and that improves efficiency. So what technology adds the bet is what it adds will net out positive or at least neutral. And we're seeing those play out internally, and we're starting to see customers talk about it. But it'll end up being a decision of, well, why do you want to do this? If there's no compelling reason, there's no point doing a tool.
And we have time for one more quick question.
Okay.
So there's two sides to the question, so I'm cheating a little bit. So I see you have integrations with CS Disco, which is good, but as that volume grows, it could be cost prohibitive. So the first half of the question is, can you simply harvest all the data in some format that can be imported into any utility? And the second side of that question is, can you import into Workplace data in some reasonable format from other solutions so that this can be a long-term container as well as a go-forward container?
Got it. So the first piece, are you asking this question as somebody who would be a customer using Workplace or a SaaS vendor or software product selling into a customer?
Somebody helping a customer get data when they need it.
Got it.
And then put data where it belongs.
Got it. Okay. So the first piece, you can absolutely do that. There's no need for you to use like CS Disco if you don't want to use it. You get God mode access to a system. You can extract data and dump it anywhere you want. That's totally fine. On the reverse, we have to be partners who help customers make those decisions. We'll have to be thoughtful about what needs to be in Workplace. Not everything needs to be in Workplace. We'd rather have like flat files live in EFSS products. It's just better. Like, I know Box just announced integration with Google Vision API where if you put content in, it'll come back and tell you, hey, that's like a pair of shoes or a car or whatever. Like, and they have workflows that trigger off of that stuff. So it's much better that the information lives there. But once you've made the decision saying, hey, this information is better, it's better that it lives here in Workplace, you can use the APIs to write into Workplace from another system. So you can inject data.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you for taking our challenging questions.
Thank you.